I am a nurse and also a health visitor. Um, I have taken my camera off because I can't seem to see the PowerPoint with the camera on. So, like Nicola said, put any questions in the chat. I can't see that either. So maybe, I don't know, Nicola, if you want to, because there's quite a lot on the call, do them all at the end, maybe.
Yeah,
Um,
that works for you.
yeah, and I've left time, so any questions, yeah, at the end. I could talk about safer sleep for ages, and I'm really passionate about it. And I'm very aware that this is for non-health professionals. So I've tried to keep the messaging really clear and concise. But if you have any specific questions about any elements of it, I'm really happy to have those at the end and go into more depth about any bits at the end. When we're finished, just jot them down and then ask me at the end. So try and keep it concise and not talk too long because I could talk for ages about safer sleep. And if anyone puts their hands up, I can't see any of that either. So I just plow on. Also, the moving of the slides is a little bit slow. So just at the beginning, self-care and support. I'm aware that this is a very emotive topic, and I'll be talking about the risks of a baby dying unexpectedly. And so this may bring up feelings and emotions. And so it's just to say, please get support from your team leaders after the training if you feel that you need it. Nicola and I will also stay on the end of the Teams call at the end if anyone wants to talk. And you can always email me and have a chat about something that may be specific to you afterwards. My email address is there. I'm aware that you may work in a team that's been affected by the sudden death of a child or have had contact with it. And so, yeah, please shout and get support. So, firstly, just a little bit of terminology, and some of the terms that we use can be similar and different. So in this presentation today, I will predominantly use SUDI, which means the sudden unexpected death in infancy. And you might hear people talk about SIDS or interchange them or use them together, or research talking about SIDS. And so SIDS really is a subcategory of SUDI. So it's a category of a sudden unexpected death. And it will be where no cause can be found, such as there might be an unsafe sleeping environment or a risk factor was identified. But where nothing is identified, you might see the cause of death given as SIDS. And then just to highlight cot death. And so cot death has previously been used a lot in the past, and I still hear people using cot death a lot. And we try to tend not to use the term cot death, because of course babies don't just die in cots, they die in all sorts of places. And so using the word cot death would perhaps make people think that, oh, all the safer sleep is only sort of applicable to babies in cots. So why are we talking about safer sleep? It's the most common cause of death for infants between 1 and 12 months. And so in 2021, and these are our last lot of sort of big statistics nationally, it takes a while for things to catch up, but in 2021, 182 sudden infant deaths were recorded for the entire UK. And so to break that down, that's approximately 3 babies a week dying from SUDI. And then interestingly, one thing to note from the statistics in 2021 is that when we look at the ages of mothers for SUDI, the highest rate, so the group with the highest rate was for mothers under 20 years. And so within this group, it was over 4 times higher than all the other groups, all the other age groups. And so we should remember this when talking to our young mums about safer sleep. And it's worth knowing what this means for Surrey and what this looks like for our Surrey families. So we did a thematic review and looked at SUDIs between 2014 and 2022, and there were 26 babies that died from probable SUDI, and so that's really is quite a significant number. If you were interested and you wanted to look at this in more depth, and we can put this in the chat if it's helpful, you can find all the information about our SUDI thematic review from this link. And actually, it's really easy. If you probably were just to Google SUDI Surrey audit or thematic review, actually, it's the first thing that pops up. So it's always good to start with the basics and what the best practice is. And one of the most important things I'd love for you to remember from the training today is that babies are safest at sleep on a firm and flat surface that is clear and always on their backs. So firm, flat, clear, and on their back. The back bit, you may remember the Back to Sleep campaign. Some of you might not. And after the Back to Sleep campaign, which was run by Anne Diamond, the rate of SIDS has reduced by 81% since that campaign. So it's really, really effective to put babies onto their back. And so when thinking about these main principles, we're thinking that it's for every sleep and not just at night, because babies sleep in the day and not just at night. And so we're talking about safer sleep for all scenarios. And when we think about all of those scenarios and we try and think about firm, flat, and clear surface, I appreciate there is a lot of equipment on the market, and we'll try and look at some of those today and what I think about the most popular things on the market, and asking, is it firm? Is it flat? Is it clear? And trying to apply these principles to everything that you may come across today. So, safe sleep advice can be given at any contact with a family and applies to all sleeps, as we've talked about. And so, this might be in a car seat, in a waiting room, it could be in a pram whilst you're in a playground. And obviously, everyone that's in the training today will be from all sorts of specialities, and you may come across families in all different scenarios. And it's thinking about how we can apply these safer sleep messages to when and how and where we might meet our families and what messages we might get across. And thinking about safer sleep isn't just about what we do at home or what a family might do at home, and not just about what they might do at night. It's about all scenarios, all situations where families might be putting their child to sleep. So, what are the risk factors? The risk factors for SUDI: smoking, young mothers under 20, and we've talked about that being the highest group, baby's low birth weight, they're premature, and then we'll talk more in depth about alcohol, drugs, co-sleeping, sleeping positions, temperatures, and equipment. And I'll go through them as much as I can in the presentation without overloading you. So we completed an audit in 2022 and spoke to families in clinics across Surrey. We asked them what they knew about safer sleep, if anything. And as you can see from the graph, lots remembered feet to the foot of the cot, and I think that's a quite catchy, easy one, feet to the foot, or on backs. But the important risk factors that we really need to press are smoking, alcohol. And you can see from this chart that actually smoking and alcohol was one of the things that families couldn't recall being spoken about or couldn't remember anything about it. And right down at the bottom there, about prematurity, families couldn't remember anything being spoken to them about these risk factors. And we know that thinking about these high risk factors, smoking specifically, that over a third of SUDI deaths could be avoided if no women smoked during pregnancy. So as we go through the risk factors, think about the situations that you may meet families in and what it might look like for you in your profession, or, when you might get the opportunities to talk about safer sleep. All of these situations on this slide would need a conversation with that family. And hopefully by the end of this session, you'll be able to confidently recognize why we might want to have a conversation with a family if you notice their baby or notice them sleeping like this. So room temperature should be between 16 and 20 degrees when babies are sleeping. So I'd always recommend a portable room thermometer as being a good idea, because remembering babies don't just sleep in cots in the bedroom at night. They may be downstairs, they may be over at grandma's house. And so the temperature also is ever changing. And what a baby would need today might be different to next week. In the last few days, it's been quite cold and it's getting colder. And so this is problematic. And it's certainly problematic when we're thinking about using car seats and prams. Car seats can be quite padded, and babies can overheat really, really quickly, especially when they're overdressed. And so also then thinking about our car seats and prams, we go back to, is it firm? Is it flat? Is it clear? It's a no. It's a no for all of those. And therefore, close observation is required when babies are sleeping in prams or car seats. And then you add into that the temperature, so what the temperature might be outside or inside, or is it winter or it's summer. And so that baby might be in a pram suit with fleecy blankets over the top. And so in the winter, the temperature outside, say, might be 7 degrees, but inside with the heating on, it's probably 20 degrees. And so maybe this family's just walked into clinic with a baby in a car seat in a fluffy pram suit, and the clinic temperature is over 20 degrees, and you don't have a coat on and you don't have a jumper on. So that's making you think, well, is that baby overwrapped? Is it too hot? Also, I know that it's not firm, it's not flat, it's not clear. And so actually this is a situation that this baby needs to be observed all of the time. And perhaps I might say to the family, oh gosh, it's quite warm in here compared to what it is outside. Do you want to unwrap your baby, or do you know the risks of baby overheating? Or, oh, it's quite warm inside. Should we just take the extra blanket off of your baby? Or do you want to unzip their pram suit? And start thinking about today how you might open those conversations up and how you think you might want to say to a family about safer sleep when they're in your waiting room, and the words that you might use, or how you best want to approach that. And in the picture there in the right, blackout covers for the sun, they're a big no. And so you often see families walking around with these, and they're sold as sunscreens, and they clip on to the prams and completely cover them up. And they think, great, baby's not getting any sun, or they're not getting sunburnt. Actually, they create a sauna within the pram, and there's no airflow. And so be curious about this, open the conversation, and start talking to families. Well, actually, did you know that the blackout covers on prams are not advisable? And within the safer sleep guidelines, they advise actually not using these black covers. And umbrellas or hoods, or just moving your baby around, is much more advisable. And it's about the temperature, and it's about the heat, and it's about your baby overheating. And we know that while you've got the black cover over, you're not observing your baby for that sleep for the whole time, because they're blacked out and covered up. And going back to, is that pram firm? Is it flat? And is it clear? And that's a no for all of that. And so that sleep should be observed. We talked a little bit about this coming inside. And so that might be, I don't know, coming into wherever you're working. And don't wake the baby. Bringing the baby, all wrapped up, covered up in blankets and pram suits and hats from the cold outside, coming inside, and don't wake the baby. Gently lift the car seat or push the pram inside and leave them asleep while I do X, Y, and Z. And so that's a never do this. SUDIs can happen anywhere. Is that pram? Is that car seat? Is it firm? Is it flat? Is it clear? No. Will this baby get hot? Yes. Best advice, best practice, lift the baby out onto a firm, flat mattress and ensure they don't overheat, which is easy done, isn't it, if you're at home? And so it's thinking about the situations or scenarios that you might be in wherever you're working, and what you want to say to these families. So ideally, you'd want to take the blankets off, open the pram suit, take the hat off, and make sure baby, if they are in the pram or they are staying in the car seat, is to think about keeping them cool, and thinking about making sure that they can watch that baby all of the time while it's in the car seat during your contact. And then a little bit about blankets and pram suits. We always recommend using a cellular blanket. This is the ones with the holes in, the old-fashioned ones, and a cardigan rather than the fleecy blanket. So the fleecy blankets are extra thick. They don't allow for their airflow. Lots of them are very pretty and very lovely and can be personalised. But we would recommend the cellular blankets for good airflow and reducing the temperature. And it's worth thinking about, don't double up on these blankets. So often you see with the car seats or the prams a beautiful fleece blanket, but because it's it's bigger, it doesn't fit into the pram or the car seat, and therefore it's folded 2 or 4 times um, to fit nicely snugly into the car seat. And so actually that's 2, maybe 4 layers of blanket over that baby. And if it's a fleece blanket and tucked in around the car seat or pram, that allows for no air transfer, and that baby can easily overheat. So we know temperature is a risk factor for sudden death. And then sleeping bags. Sleeping bags should always be the lowest tog possible. And therefore, if you've got a low tog, you can layer up the baby, whereas the tog of the sleeping bag can't be changed. It remains the same. So I'd recommend the lowest tog, and then using a vest with a baby grow and maybe a cardi rather than increasing the tog on the sleeping bag. And you can change that then day to day as the weather changes, review what the weather's doing, the temperature's doing, and you can take the cardi off, or have the baby just in a vest if it's really hot outside and a sleeping bag, or really hot inside and just a sleeping bag. And so I'd be more inclined actually to use a cellular blanket than a sleeping bag, because the cellular blanket's good airflow, and you can take those off easily. But I get it, sleeping bags are really popular, everyone has them, and understand that as babies move around more in their cots or cribs, the sleeping bag is attractive because it stays on the baby. And so all of these sleeping bags in this picture don't meet current standards. And so either there is no tog rating on them, or their fastenings and buttons are not safe, or the opening is too big and a baby could slip down underneath the sleeping bag. Um, and so it's just about just highlighting this to parents, that actually there are some guidelines around sleeping bags. These can be found on the Lullaby Trust website, and just thinking about why we're buying the sleeping bag that we're buying, and is it because it's really cute, or that you've seen it on Instagram? Actually, it's just really, really hot, and not recommended at all. And so if something is advertised, we often see things advertised on the internet, some of these companies, if it's advertised, it will help your baby sleep or sleep for longer, it's probably not true. And the chances are it's not safe either. And so really we shouldn't be following something because it says it helps our baby sleep for longer. What we should be looking at is safety, and is it safe? And then sleeping position, going back to, is it firm? Is it flat? Is it clear? Are they on their back? And so the risk of SUDI increases 6 times if a baby's on their front. And so never ever recommend a seat positioner. They're not firm, they're not flat, and they're not clear. I'll talk about a little bit more about seat positioners as we go. Um, and so the position that a baby should be in is always on their back, feet to the foot of the cot, making sure that covers cannot go up over their face. Babies should never be on their sides or on their tummies. And lots of people will say, oh, my baby sleeps better on their tummy. Well, if you're going, the recommendation always is to keep the baby on their back when they're asleep. But if you're going to sit and watch your baby 100% of the time while they're sleeping on their tummy, that would be the advisable, the best thing to do if a parent's adamant that they want their baby to sleep on their tummy. But the best advice and the safest advice is always on their backs, um, feet to the foot of the cot, firm, flat, clear. And so never roll a blanket up to put a baby to sleep on their side. So side sleeping is as unsafe as front sleeping. It's 2 times, increases the risk by 2 times of baby sleeping on their side. Never advocate the use of some of these cushions that babies can put in between them, roll up behind them. Positioners put on their heads to keep them on their sides. They're all unsafe. On their backs. On their backs. Is it firm? Is it flat? Is it clear? And so the increased risk of sleeping in a chair or a sofa with a baby is actually 50 times increased risk. So we know that parents get really tired and it's a really high risk situation. So always try and talk to parents about sofa sleeping or armchair sleeping, and applying our principle again. Is it firm? Is it flat? Is it clear? Is the baby on the back? No. So it's a no for all of those. And I guess if you're wide awake and checking your baby regularly, then a baby can sleep on you like this. But the chances are, right, that you're tired with a baby, and the chances are, if you're snuggled on the sofa, warm, it is risky. You are going to doze off, or you are going to fall asleep. So the best advice is to put your baby on a firm, flat mattress that's clear and on their back, and try and move away from any sleeping with babies on sofas or in chairs. And to be really clear about what's clear, examples of how cots are commonly found and are commonly advertised. So it looks very pretty with cot bumpers and pillows and quilts, and we have found that they're commonly advertised and for sale as bundles that come with cots. And so it's about educating families and saying actually a cot bumper and a pillow is not a clear cot. A clear cot is a clear cot with nothing else in it other than a mattress and a sheet, and then whatever blanket you're going to use to cover your baby, preferably a cellular blanket. If you're not going to use a cellular blanket and you want to use a sleeping bag, then it's a sleeping bag without the cellular blanket. Um, Teddies, very pretty teddies and name teddies, that they should also not be in cots, and that is not clear. Teddies and cots are not advised, so it should be completely clear. So a quick look back at the sleep positioners and baby nests. And so these have become really popular, commonly known as the Sleepyhead. I think there's a couple of new brands out, and these seem to be the must-have at the moment in the UK. And so going back to are are they firm? Are they flat? And are they clear? No. None of these are firm, none of them are flat, and they're not clear because of the padding that's around them. They create much too much heat around the baby, um, and there's a risk of increased temperature of the baby. And so often you'll find families using these sleepy nests, and then they've also got a fleecy blanket tucked in around it, or baby might also be in a sleepy bag with inside the sleepy nest, so that increases the temperature. They're extremely popular, and I would say that most parents have purchased one. So it's just about educating around the sleepiness. And I guess if you are visiting a family or you see a family using one, it's about talking to them about actually they're not safe, they're not firm, they're not flat, they're not clear, they increase the temperature and they increase the risk of SUDI. But if you have spent a fortune on one and you do want to use it, then you can use it. But I would suggest using it when you are completely observing your baby 100% of the time and watching them all of the time, and you're not going to doze off to sleep on the sofa, or you're not using it in a Moses basket when you go to have a nap on the bed. Any of those situations. They also shouldn't be used on sofas, up high on tables. They need to be used on the floor when you're watching your child all of the time. So the Lullaby Trust do not recommend the use of sleepy nests, baby nests, sleep positioners. And so the Lullaby Trust have a lovely graphic picture here about how it's a no. There is a new one on the market called Perflow. And this is why it's so difficult for all of us when we're talking to parents, is that things are always changing and there's always new claims and there's always new must-haves. There's a picture there on the right of this new one, Perflow, and it is marketed on their website as completely safe for unsupervised sleep. But when I look at the website, it's quite contradictory on its safe for sleep advice, and it's not a safe sleeping space. It's not firm, it's not flat, and it's not clear. And so the Lullaby Trust have in on some of their forums talked about the Perflow and said that it doesn't actually follow their guidance. They wouldn't advise its use, and just refer you back to all the information on the Lullaby Trust that talk about safe sleep and all of the things that I've talked about today. So you can always visit the Lullaby Trust. There's a wealth of information on there. So in our thematic review, going back to when we looked at between that time period, babies that died from sudden unexplained death, we found that a massive 80% of babies that died from SUDI were in an unsafe sleeping position. So that's 80%. So I've talked about the Lullaby Trust. If you have a family that may be struggling a little bit with equipment, or they don't really know what they're buying and can't afford to buy new things, or just struggling a little bit, the Lullaby Trust offer a bedtime bundle. The referral's really easy to find on their website, and so you could complete a referral and get a bundle sent to a family. Or I tend to use in Surrey Stripey Stork, who are absolutely amazing. They cover the whole of Surrey, and if you made a referral into them, they would provide a whole package of equipment for a family that's struggling, and that will include a safer sleep leaflet, and so all of their equipment follow all the safer sleep guidelines, so we can help families to make the right choices. And so always going back to these basics, thinking about all the scenarios that we might meet our families in, and some of these pictures um, are some of the scenarios that you might find yourself in. And so it's thinking about, is it firm? Is it flat? Is it clear? Have you just walked into this family and the twins are in rotating, moving, vibrating, heated, uh, pods, and mum is busy in the kitchen doing the cooking. Are these firm? No. Are they flat? No. Are they clear? No. Are they likely to overheat in these? Yes. Are these babies completely on their backs? No. Is this really unsafe? Yes, yes, yes. So just applying those firm, flat, clear to all of these situations. And so that goes for cars, prams, bouncy chairs, sleepy heads on sofas, all of these we see all of the time. And so I guess my big message is don't try and fix it. The cot or the Moses basket is all that's needed. And a lot of these things sell themselves on, baby will sleep for a longer period of time, or increases the amount of time they sleep, or help your baby sleep longer. The reason that babies don't sleep for long periods and we have broken nights sleep is because babies don't sleep for long periods. They want to feed really frequently because they have really small tummies. They're looking for comfort and reassurance frequently through touch and smell. And so we need to move away from, oh, is your baby good? Do they sleep for a long time? A baby that sleeps for 4 hours straight doesn't mean it's a good baby. All babies are good babies, and parents will be sleep deprived. And so equipment that sells itself on promoting longer sleep periods is probably unsafe. Just go back to the basics. A cot or a Moses basket is all that's needed for safer sleep. Um, and so co-sleeping, this means we often hear the term co-sleeping. It means a variety of things. It means sleeping with your baby anywhere. So that could be on a sofa, on a chair, um, and falling asleep on the sofa, as we know, we've already talked about, is really unsafe. And that risk is increased by 50 times. So when we talk about co-sleeping, it's sleeping with your baby, and that could be anywhere. It's not just talking about sleeping with your baby in a bed. And so when we talk about co-sleeping on the sofa, go back to, is it firm? Is it flat? Are they on their back? No. And so sharing a bed, so bed sharing is a type of co-sleeping. And then I thought I'd just add this lovely picture in here, which Nicola found this last week. And this is the kind of messaging we have to think about that our families maybe looking at all of the time. Families always using Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. So Joe Wicks has posted a beautiful picture of him asleep with his baby on a chair, baby on his front, sleeping on him. Massively unsafe, massively poor messaging. Is it firm? Is it flat? Is it clear? No. Is that baby on their back? No. Really unsafe sleep, really unsafe sleep. And so then bed sharing evidence shows that it's not bed sharing that increases the risk of SUDI, but bed sharing when a particular high risk circumstance is present. So if you're talking about safer sleep and discussing nighttime sleeps, you could ask your family, have you shared a bed with your baby, or do you think you might? Okay, can I ask you some more questions so that we can think about what's safest for your baby? And so when we think about bed sharing, so sleeping in your bed with your baby, we need to make sure that that's safe. And so the safest way to do that is to sleep, as in the picture I'm going to show you next is a good diagram of it, but also making sure that nobody smokes. So that's mum or dad or partner. Nobody's smoking at the home. Nobody's drunk any alcohol, and nobody's taken any drugs. That baby isn't premature, which is before 37 weeks, and they weren't born at a low birth weight. And if any of those are a yes, that makes bed sharing a high risk circumstance, and the advice would be not to bed share with that baby. So again, if anyone smokes in the house, anyone's drunk any alcohol, taken any drugs, baby's premature or of a low birth weight, then they should not be bed sharing with their baby at night. It would be unsafe. And so safe bed sharing looks like this. So baby always on the outside. Baby should not be in between the parents. They shouldn't be propped up on any pillows, not under any duvets. It should be firm and flat and clear. And so parents' duvets shouldn't be over the baby as well. They should have their own separate sleeping bag or cellular blanket. Need to think about the temperature, making sure the room temperature is between the 16 and 20, not too hot in there, making sure the position, baby's on their back, it's firm, flat and clear. And then the no's are drugs and alcohol, smoking, prematurity and low birth weight. So breastfeeding. It's important to recognise that breastfeeding is a protective factor and should be encouraged. Safe sleep is not to discourage breastfeeding, and we do recognise that lots of mums who are breastfeeding want to bed share with their baby and breastfeed and bed share with their baby at night. And so it's just about returning back to this and making sure that a breastfeeding mum is bed sharing in this way. It looks like this, and that even if they're breastfeeding, if they have taken any drugs, drunk a glass of wine, smoking in the house, or had a premature low birth weight baby, then actually bed sharing isn't safe, even if they are breastfeeding. And thinking about if a breastfeeding mum's been to a party or an evening out and has had some drinks, any alcohol, reminding that co-sleeping is a no for that night. Breastfeeding is a protective factor, but it doesn't mean that safer sleep shouldn't be followed. And so we know that breastfeeding for the first 2 months reduces the risk of SIDS by half. And then smoking. Smoking is still the single biggest identifiable risk factor for poor birth outcomes. Babies are at a greater risk of SUDI when a mother smokes during pregnancy or if there's smoking in the home. And so an estimated 1/3 of SUDI deaths could be prevented if mothers did not smoke. So in our Surrey thematic review, it showed that of those babies that we looked at between that period, that 60% of babies lived with a smoker in-house. And so that's quite a big statistic. And I think now in Surrey, it's antenatal booking that you will automatically be referred into smoking cessation if you are a smoker. And so it's a opt out rather than an opt in, and that's to try and get any smoking pregnant mums into smoking cessation sessions. And then just a little bit there about vapes. We still don't know about vapes and all the different types of vapes and all the different chemicals in vaping and e-cigarettes. But what we do know is that a large majority of them do still contain nicotine. And the research links nicotine to impaired arousal, which could be related to SUDI. So it would be the recommendation that if families are using e-cigarettes and vapes, then we would go back to, if you are thinking about bed sharing with your baby and you vape, the advice would be not to bed share because that vape may contain nicotine. We don't know what it does and doesn't contain. Alcohol, drugs and smoking. This highlights the risk of bed sharing or co-sleeping with the added risk of smoking or drug taking. And so most families that I visit following the death of their baby didn't realise that what the risks were of smoking and SUDI. And that's not because they weren't told at some point. They just didn't absorb it or they didn't understand exactly what it meant. So we need to think about the language that we might use when talking about safer sleep and smoking or drug taking. And not doing the don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, because the don'ts are often forgotten. What we need to try and do is enter into a conversation that's specific to that family. It's about being curious, asking questions. What's your plans for where your baby's going to sleep? And because you smoke, the risks of your baby dying unexpectedly is greater. So we need to think about it carefully, don't we? Um, and just to say, it's also okay to use the word dying. You can use that word when talking to families. Um, and I guess if you're feeling like this conversation is going to be a bit complex, and needs some health professionals' input, then you can always refer back into the Health Visiting Service in Surrey. And so they have an advice line. The numbers there, it's really easy to find online. You could just put Surrey Health Visitor Advice Line or Surrey Health Visitor Contact, and that comes up. And you could refer a family back into the health visitors and ask for some safer sleep discussions. Obviously, you need to get consent from that family before you phone. But the health visitors would welcome a referral if you felt that things were unsafe and they needed a better discussion with a health professional. So the pictures that were there at the beginning, go back through and think about these pictures. And I hope that if you met with these situations or meet families, that you might find the opportunity to ask about safer sleep, be curious, open out the question, where is your baby sleeping and what about in the day? So all of these pictures have are not firm, are not flat, and are not clear. You've got a baby on their side with a kind of sleepiness inside the pram, wrapped up with a fleecy blanket. Dad asleep on the sofa with baby with headphones on, babies on their front. Um, Pram, perhaps it's winter with pram suit, hat, a nest inside, and a blanket, and the cover over the pram. If that was to be pushed into your waiting room, what might you think or what might you say? Baby asleep on the sofa. It's not firm, it's not flat, it's not clear. Are they on their back? No. And the sleepy nest is a no-no. And that sleepy nest has a pillow in it as well as the sleepy nest, and the blanket looks very cute, but it's not firm, it's not flat, and it's not clear. And so just to say that Sudis in Surrey have reduced over the last few years, and we're doing really well across the system, and we just need to keep going. Preventing just one Sudi by giving some clear, safer sleep advice could be what saves one baby. And so we're doing really, really well. Just need to keep going and keep going with the messaging and making sure that we're all saying the same thing. And then I just wanted to finish up by saying that we are also now talking about Icon. Some of you might have heard of Icon, some of you might not. And so Icon is about when babies cry and how it can be stressful and overwhelming when babies cry. And I did talk a little bit about families, being concerned about, oh, how long does your baby sleep? And my baby doesn't sleep for that long, and baby should sleep for this long, and my baby's not a good baby. And it's really overwhelming. And babies do cry, and they do cry a lot, and they are awake a lot and keep you awake a lot. And so research indicates that some parents and carers may lose control when faced with persistent infant crying. And this could potentially lead to severe outcomes such as shaking a baby, which is a tragic consequence of abusive head trauma, which could result in catastrophic brain injuries, which can lead to death or long-term health and learning disabilities. So ICON stands for infant crying is normal. Comforting methods can help. It's okay to walk away and never ever shake a baby. And from September the 23rd to the 27th is Icon Week, which is going to be dedicated to raising awareness about infant crying and how to manage it, supporting parents and carers, and preventing serious injuries, illnesses, and even fatalities by the abusive head trauma. And so Nicola will probably talk about this more than I can, but there is a roundtable event Monday the 23rd. Hopefully we can put the link in the chat, and it's about supporting parents with learning disabilities, Icon and Sudi, and engaging friends and relatives in supporting families and parents. And that's it from me, Nicola. So I'll see if there's any questions. I'll try and stop sharing.
Thanks, Natalie. That was brilliant. I have put the information in the chat. That was a really comprehensive presentation. Thank you very much. Emma has put a comment in the chat, and I hadn't seen this, but you might have done. Can you see the chat?
I'm just going to try and get it open now.
She said that she saw someone using a weighted swaddle blanket the other day and she'd not seen one before, and the mum had been recommended it. Have you
Yeah,
heard anything about it? I did a quick Google and they are lots of them for sale.
there are lots of them for sale, so they would be a no from me because they're not a cellular blanket that's got clear airflow. They've not got a tog rating on them. Um, and you would think that if it's depending on the age of the baby, if it's weighted, how's that going to restrict that baby's movement within their sleep? So it'd be a no for me. And this is it, isn't it? It's ever changing. There's always new things coming to the market, and that's kind of weighted blankets were sensory, weren't they, for children with sensory challenges that like the weight of a weighted blanket. I think more and more people use weighted blankets because actually they are really nice. And so it's playing on, or your baby might sleep longer if it's got a weighted blanket on it. So it'd be a no.
Thanks, Natty. There's a question from Abby about swaddling. Can you see the chat? I don't know if you can. Shall I read it
There's,
out?
yeah, read it out.
Is swaddling a no, full stop?
So it's not a no full stop. I'll go back to the lullaby guidance where they would say if you're going to swaddle your baby, then the safest way to do it, I don't know if you can see me, is to swaddle underneath the armpits. And so not to have the arms inside of the swaddle. And just to make sure if you are swaddling that you use a light blanket, preferably a cellular blanket. Don't be drawn into some of the blankets that are sold as swaddle blankets that have Velcro on them and that are much thicker. Use a cellular blanket. But I suppose it's talking about why you're using a swaddling, why do you want to swaddle? Because ultimately it'd be to make the baby feel much like they would feel in a baby nest. So this whole kind of cocooned, roasty toasty, snuggly, um, and it could increase the temperature within the sleep environment, which is why they say have the arms out and just do it underneath, and so there's a bit of movement and flow of air. So they can use them, but don't put the arms in. And then talking about why can we just try the cellular blanket over the top, and also a conversation about if you're swaddling a small baby that can't move, what happens when that baby does start to move, and then they throw themselves out of the swaddle and then get upset and wake themselves up because they're used to being swaddled. You get into a bit of a vicious cycle with that. Yeah.
Thanks, Natalie. And then Amy had made a point, which I know you said before as well, but some parents get confused if their baby's been in SCABU. The ward keep the babies wrapped with warm blankets, etc.
Yeah, so as soon as they come out of SCABU and go home, then it's to follow the safe asleep advice. And that the special care baby unit should be saying this when they leave. And I think the Lullaby Trust have a really lovely leaflet that you can print off their website. And it's about exactly that, taking a baby home from an intensive care or special care baby unit. And that as soon as they come out of that unit, they need to follow the safe asleep advice. So lots of babies in SCABU have hats on and are on their sides, but that's because they're being observed by a nurse 24/7 and they might have SATS monitors on and those kind of things. So it's all back to basics, firm, flat, on their back, clear, no hats, temperature, as soon as they come home.
Thanks. And then Andrew's asked, is there guidance on how long a baby should be in a car seat given it isn't a flat surface?
So no, there's no clear guidance because nobody wants to put a time limit on it. In our the advice that I would give to a family is that if you're traveling in a car seat, is to use the mirrors. So have a mirror so that you can keep looking at your baby all of the time, making sure that when you are on a journey, you've thought about that temperature. So the car seat's really hot in itself. Make sure the baby's not got coats on, pram suits, blankets, because probably you're going to have the temperature up in the car anyway, because you won't be driving with a coat, a hat, and a scarf on. And then thinking about if your journey is going to be a long journey, then thinking about putting your brakes in. So I think we generally use the term sort of around 30 to 40 minutes would be as much with using the mirrors also, is to try and stop after 30, 40 minutes and just check your baby's okay if you're driving without anybody in the back, but nobody will put a firm sort of time on that. And I think we say 30, 40-ish because thinking about sleep cycles for babies, that they tend to wake after around about 30-40 minutes because they come into that light sleep cycle before they might go back into a deep sleep cycle.
Thanks, Natalie. I don't know if anyone, oh, Amy's put a comment in, but people could put their hands up as well if they want to speak. A few years ago, I read a research article from New Zealand, I think it was, and how a doctor was looking into SUDIs stemming from the brain and missing a certain element.
So there's always loads of research around SUDI. There is some current research that we are becoming a little bit involved with at the moment about genetics. And so thinking about, is there something else at play? So we know about the risk factors, but for those babies that don't have any risk factors, what else might there be? Is there something to do with genetics? And so there's some research going on at the moment, trying to look at genetics of SUDI babies and seeing if we can find any themes, anything that is shared amongst these children, but a lot of it we don't know. And so there is nothing else at the moment other than the risk factors that we know about, and questions over, is there something else to play, something else at play there as well. There was some research that was funded a little bit, I think, with the Lullaby Trust a while ago, and they were looking at infant newborn hearing tests, but that's all been proven to be not relevant.
Thanks, Natalie. Casey's got her hand up.
Hi, Natalie. I'm the principal social worker for Children's Services, and I also manage the audit and practice standards team. And I just wanted to thank you really for the presentation, because I think it's really clear, it's really easy to digest and kind of take forward. And really, I hope for practitioners who are on the call, and I know there are practitioners from a lot of different agencies, are going to be, I feel like they're really going to be able to use this when speaking with parents, when kind of writing up assessments and recording. And it may even be something that I think about for those families where our intervention might be very short-lived, that we're still finding ways to get these conversations in with parents before our involvement ends, on the early help level and things like that. But no, I just really wanted to thank you. I think putting it in these terms in a way that's easy to remember and kind of gives people the confidence to have these conversations, without coming across as judgmental or kind of saying there's only one way to do it. But when there's such clear evidence in relation to why a baby is more at risk, I think it will give everyone much more confidence to take this forward.
So just to say on the back of that, I was arranging, and I can't remember who, I'd have to look through my emails. There was going to be some quarterly training for social workers, and that's gone quiet. So just to say
Okay.
that, if you want me to come and do any sessions for your social workers, I'm always really happy to do that. You just have to email me and we can do specific sessions.
Yeah, no, we have over the last couple years have been doing, an extreme amount of work in regards to improving our response to kind of unborn, pre-birth assessments, our processes within children's services, and we're seeing a real shift in that, which is great. But I mean, the safer sleeping element, where that features, where we see it in recording, how we're talking to families, making sure that it's a joint effort with health. Just because health might have said it once, as you've talked about, doesn't mean that when we go on a home visit and we see a baby sleeping in an unsafe way, that we aren't then carrying on that conversation, trying to potentially maybe re-engage health into that and recording how we're talking about that. But yeah, absolutely. There's definitely an appetite and a lot of progress is being made already, but I'll definitely take you up on that.
Thanks, Casey. Laura's asked, is the offer of training something we could join up and offer to West Sussex social workers?
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank
Natalie.
you.
And Ali asked, is there any scope to get this advice while at the postnatal ward? There's an incredibly quick turnaround and out the door with limited, if any, advice. That's
Yes.
from a person. nor recent
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. We do talk to the hospital trusts and the midwives. They do have their own in-house training. They are talking to families antenatally with safer sleep messages, and doing a checklist on discharge, and talking about safer sleep. I don't know about how robust those are and audits that are being done for those. I wouldn't like to comment on inpatient.
I think when we did the audit about the safer sleep messages, Natalie, they would have included the conversations with the midwives, and it was run again, wasn't it, recently in-house?
Yeah.
And the results were the same as the audit we'd previously done about parents not recalling the conversations.
Yeah.
Avril did say that Pan Sussex are running Safer Sleep, and that social workers are welcome to join them. So Ali, Laura, it might be worth speaking to Avril as well about that. Oh, and Caroline had joined late, but she just wanted to clarify, is SIDS different to SUDI? Because she missed the beginning.
Yeah, no, I'll just go back to my terminology. So SUDI is sudden unexpected death in infancy, and SIDS would be kind of a subcategory of SUDI. And so SIDS would be where no cause, such as unsafe sleeping environment or risk factors, were identified. You might see SIDS written, but it's kind of a subcategory within the SUDI. So we tend to use SUDI all of the time, and then there's no misinterpretation of it.
We should say, Caroline, there's no such thing as a silly question. We always like a question. I don't know if anyone's got any other questions. If anyone wants to put their hand up and speak, ask Natalie anything. Well, we've got her on the call. Amy's put her hand up.
Hello, sorry, my camera's not working because my laptop's decided to break down on me. It was just a quick, intriguing question about over COVID. Was there any difference in statistics regarding more or less or anything like that?
No, Nicola's
Yes.
probably better about statistics. Do you want to answer that, Nicola?
I was thinking, I think our rates
down.
are going down. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Rates going down.
I wonder if also whether parents are around a bit more to observe their babies as well, because there's an issue, isn't there, about babies sleeping in different rooms, but maybe they're around a bit more.
Yeah, working from home.
Yeah.
Things like that. That's what I was hoping there'd be obviously a positive of
Yeah.
the terror that it caused. But yeah, I didn't know if that would be any different. But it's been really, really insightful. Thank you, Natalie. It's really, really appreciated.
Thanks, Amy.
I think someone's just asked there, what about babies who sleep in baby carriers? And I guess you mean like the on the front baby carriers. And so we would say it's not firm, it's not flat, they're not on their back. So you need to observe the baby all of the time while they're on the front of you. And small babies, you always want to try and lift their head a little bit. So it's quite easy for them to get scrunched up like this with their head down in the baby carriers. And so it's about making sure you've got good skin to skin contact so that you can feel your baby against you, making sure that their head's up and their airway isn't down, and observing them all of the time while they're in the carrier on you. And thinking about overheating, because again, you can be, wrapped up against you're quite warm. And then if they've got if you're outside walking with a carrier, if they've got a pram suit on, too hot. So thinking about the temperature.
Thanks, Natalie. And Michelle has asked about the leaflets with the red book. We have in Surrey paid for an extra sheet to go in around safer sleep, and it's it's an assessment really, and a conversation with parents about safer sleep, and it's supposed to be completed by a health professional, and that's when we did the audit, that's where we found that the sheet wasn't being completed. So there might be that obviously health professionals are having these conversations with parents, but it wasn't being documented, and parents couldn't always recall the information. I think now we've moved to a lot of electronic information, there are a lot fewer leaflets available for parents, which is obviously better for the environment in lots of ways, but also doesn't give parents who might not have access to the web really a way of reading that information, especially not in an accessible form. So that's always difficult as well, isn't it? Has anybody got any other questions for Natalie? Please do email in or message us if you've got any other questions. It's been really wonderful to see so many people here today, so thank you very much for taking the time to attend, and thanks Natalie for taking the time out of your day to come and present. It was great to have your expertise here.
You're very welcome. You know, I like talking about safe sleep.
Oh, we're really grateful that you came. Thank you. And please do get in touch if anyone's got any questions. And just give you back about 30 seconds until everyone has to go to their next meeting. So thanks very much for coming, everyone.